Hello fellow hunters, and welcome back to the channel. Today we are diving into the world of Monster Hunter. Now I was not fortunate enough to go to the reveal and the hands-on demo at Gamescom this year. However, I have been doing a lot of research and I've collected a bunch of juicy details from the event, as well as some of the new stuff that's been coming out of the Pax West panel. I put it all in one place for you guys, so hopefully this will save you some time and you don't have to go watch hours and hours of live streams. From the breathtaking new environments to the game-changing mechanics, Monster Hunter Wilds is set to revolutionize the hunting experience we all know and love. In this video, we'll be breaking down some of the biggest and most exciting changes coming to the game compared to the previous Monster Hunter titles. We'll be exploring the new introduction of dynamic weather systems that can turn the tide of battle, the brand new secret mount that adds a new layer of strategy, and massive, ever-changing environments that ensure no two hunts are ever the same. Plus, we'll take an even closer look at some of the new UI changes and combat mechanics, giving you more control over your looks and hunts than ever before. So gear up and get ready to uncover all of the thrilling updates that Monster Hunter Wilds has in store. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for more Monster Hunter content. Let's jump right in. To start things off, let's go over the seamless environment. With Wilds, Capcom has fully overhauled the game to make it truly feel open world. Other Monster Hunter games, including the most recent installments World and Rise, were littered with loading screens and menus that lock you out of gameplay, things that just break up the flow of playing. In Wilds, this has all been removed. From beginning a quest to bringing up the minimap, everything can be done while you're still out on a hunt. Just running around and attacking a monster will begin a quest, no more having to run to the gathering hub or sitting at the quest board waiting for the game to load. Even at the end of the hunt, there's no more end screen. You simply just see the rewards and stats, along with some of the accolades, which are being brought back from some of the other games. Things like who did the most damage or who broke the most parts, etc. But the game won't load you out of the instance. You'll just stay out on the hunt and continue playing without any interruption. From all the footage and gameplay that I've seen, this truly looks like a next-gen game, like the ones that we were promised back when the newest generation of consoles was released. The other part of the game that makes it truly look next-gen is this ecosystem and the endemic life throughout the world. Between the smaller monsters interacting with each other, and even with the larger monsters, to the world becoming dynamic and changing based off of your gameplay. For example, when fighting Doshigoma, there's a scene where this hunter will dodge and the monster hits the sand. That creates like a divot, and it reveals an item that can be collected. There was another example where they were using fire attacks while in the plains area, and the dry grassy spots caught fire. The weather is even very dynamic throughout this world. Scenes like this where they're mid-fight and a sandstorm kicks up. The crazy thing is, it was mentioned that this doesn't affect the entire map. So you can be fighting over in the sandy area, but then on the other side of the map it's just beautiful and there's nothing going on. And it's the same thing with the lightning storms that Raidao brings. This is the type of small detail that makes a world feel alive and realistic. Speaking of the map, the minimap also got a huge overhaul from Monster Hunter World. There was some feedback given to Capcom that in World, the minimap was too difficult to follow due to some of the verticality that some of the maps had, especially in things like the Ancient Forest, that was really difficult to follow and sometimes challenging to figure out where you were going. In Wilds, the map is now a 3D topographical map that can be accessed whenever you want and can be manipulated in a 360-degree view. It's very reminiscent of something like a Borderlands map. This is going to be a fantastic change, and I can't wait to play around with it. The fact that these monsters aren't just a one-off in the world is another huge thing as well. Let me explain. In old Monster Hunter games, you would go out on a hunt, and there would be maybe 2 or 3 different small types of monsters, and then one big monster, which was what you're hunting. In Wilds, there's maybe 5, 6, 7 different species of small monsters, but then there's the larger monster you're fighting, and it's part of a pack that's 2, 3, 4, 5 different monsters. They have pack mechanics. You're just there for the alpha of the group, but you have to get through the entire pack just to get to your target. This makes the game look and feel much less like a fetch quest and more like an actual hunt. Like you are in there and you have to get through this pack of monsters that are constantly getting in your way, protecting their alpha. Something I found really nice were some of the UI changes. If you've played a Monster Hunter game in the past, you'll know that there's a quick wheel and a sliding wheel for your inventory. These are items that you bring out with you on a hunt that you can quickly access down at the bottom of your screen. In Wilds, they've added a new expanded wheel to more easily see what you have with you, instead of just continuously scrolling through the wheel, panicking trying to find something while you're being attacked. There is apparently some controversy online about the changes to the health bar. Now they're very bright, and for lack of a better word, wiggly. I don't mind it. I think it looks pretty cool. However, some people are saying that it's too distracting and it can draw your eye from the center of the screen too much. I think the coolest thing with the new health bar and the UI changes is what I'm calling the Spidey sense. In older games, there was no way to anticipate or predict a large attack from a monster unless you had some experience fighting it. In the newer games, Capcom added screen notifications with text saying things like, "Watch out! Blah 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 is doing its thing." In Rise, they took the text notifications away and they made it more NPC based, where they'll yell at you saying something like, "Heads up!" or "Here it comes!"
Alex Rayon's readying a big attack. Get your healing items ready.
In Wilds, they seem to have changed it again. Now in your HUD, the health bar goes nuts, and when you're in danger, it'll alert you that something big is coming. I think it's kind of cool. It's, like I said, very Spidey sense-like. The next thing that I wanted to highlight is a shift in the traditional Monster Hunter story progression. In the past, there was a very vague narrative that drove the progression of the game. You, the hunter, either come to a new world, or your village is disrupted by some kind of disaster. Something's happening. You fight your way to what is known as the flagship monster, or usually the guy like on the front cover art, only to find that there's a bigger, badder monster disrupting the ecosystem, or something along those lines. But what's been shown off for Wild so far, this game has some type of narrative progression and a story associated with it. There is more cinematic content where your character is voice acted, as well as even the Palicos now talk, which I'm not 100% sure how I feel about that.
This is gonna be great!
You bet.
But the other Monster Hunter games really don't have a lot of this. We saw some of this in World. Usually it's a lot of grunting and aha! Type stuff. But for Wilds, it has a different feel to it. I believe the protagonist is trying to help return this little girl to her tribe or to her family in some way, and I would expect to see more cinematic content throughout this main story. Now let's shift to more of the gameplay changes. Something the community has asked for a really long time is more customization with the armor sets. In previous games, there were 2 different sets. You get a male set and a female set for every piece of armor. Sometimes that armor looked really good in one style, but terrible in another. In Wilds, they have given us the option to switch between either male or female, no matter which character you start with. That's really nice. Now you can hunt monsters and look good at the same time. Now, as many of you know, fashion is the true endgame. Now, one of my favorite things from Monster Hunter World that is returning is the waypoint system called Scout Flies. These led you through the map. They kind of pointed you in the right direction, and not only did they highlight your path, but they would also highlight points of interest, collectibles, and other things you may want to keep an eye out for. I really liked this in World, and I'm happy to see them returning. Now, a big change that Capcom has made to the fighting mechanics is the thing they're calling Focus Mode. Now, I have chalked Focus Mode up to Critical Eye on steroids, which Critical Eye basically gave your weapon a damage bonus for attacking weak points on a monster. But now focus mode will allow you to see those weak points. Instead of, in the old games, you would have to pull up the journal to figure out where the weak points were, and you had to have the proper weapons to do the right kind of damage. It was a whole thing. But now there's this focus mode. This allows the player to see the weak points that they've created through the fight, like wounds. The longer it goes on, the more wounds you can create. There was even mention of when monsters become enraged or when they go into their rage mechanics, things like Doshigama will reopen these wounds that you've created, and you can see this happen through the focus mode. I think that's a really interesting mechanic to add in, and I'd like to see more of that throughout the game. Probably one of the biggest changes coming in Wilds is the ability to have 2 weapon types on a hunt at one time. Previously, whatever weapon type you had with you at the start of your hunt is all you could use. Unless you went back to camp and switched out your loadout, you got one weapon, that was it. Wilds is now allowing you to equip a secondary weapon from the get-go. To switch, while you're out on a hunt, you'll either need to return to one of your pop-up camps, which I'll talk about in a minute, or you jump on your new mount, the Secret, and hit Y, or your standard weapon switch button, to change to your secondary weapon. And you can switch back seamlessly. This is going to make loadouts fantastic. You can now have a close range weapon or a ranged weapon. You could have a different elemental type. You can have a fire weapon and an ice weapon. We don't really know a whole lot about the elements of some of the monsters in the game yet, but in previous games, there were things that would switch element midway through the fight, and if you only were rocking one weapon, you were kind of SOL. Let's double back a little bit and go over the Secret. The Secret is the new bird mount that can hold your secondary weapon. It's got 2 movement modes, a free control mode and an auto movement mode that will prioritize the Scoutfly's path or your waypoint. It will automatically travel through terrain, jumping over things as well as climbing up walls to reach the location that you've marked on your map. The coolest thing is that you can even mess around with things in your inventory or check the map at the same time without interrupting the auto tracking. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I really liked the Palmuts, but this bird guy looks pretty cool. The fact that I can tinker with my weapons or my items and still be moving throughout the map is great. Now, the first time running through the map, I understand to get a feel for the area, the locale, get all the beauty, soak in all the endemic life. But like the 30th time, I just want to get to the fight as fast as possible when I'm farming a monster. So having this auto function is going to be really handy. For those of you who played Monster Hunter World, you'll be very familiar with the Slinger. The wrist grapple is going to be returning in Wilds, but it's going to be much more integrated into your gameplay. You can still use it to collect items. You can even pull off items off of small monsters on the fly, which kind of seems pretty cruel, but this is a game all about killing and trapping monsters, so I guess that's par for the course. All the environmental interactables will still be there. Things like falling boulders, vine traps are still going to be present. They've even added things like thunderbug swarms, which act like natural shock traps. Those can also be found around the map and be triggered by your Slinger. Now, one of the nicest things about Monster Hunter is that it can be played offline. In an age where everything is attached to the internet, sometimes it's nice to just disconnect for a little while. Or, in instances, maybe you won't be able to access the internet or you're on the go. Playing by yourself is great, but the hardest part about that is if you ever become stuck on a difficult fight and you want help, there's nobody around because you're not connected to the internet. In previous games, you used to be able to fire off an SOS flare to open up your session to online players who could come and join you. In Wilds, you'll still have that option, but you can now also use the flare while offline to summon in NPC Hunters to help you on your hunt. They've had their AI tweaked and will follow your lead, so you should never find them off picking flowers or fighting random monsters on the other side of the map. At the end of a hunt, monsters will essentially die and allow you to carve parts of them to use for weapons and armor. This is a big part of the entire Monster Hunter loop. In previous games, when the monster died, it no longer became physically there. And I think that may have just been a technical limitation, but you could basically just walk right through the body. People would joke calling it a monster house. In Wilds, unfortunately, this is no longer a thing. Monsters, even in death, now are a physical entity and can be climbed on to carve. So no more monster houses. Now, mounting monsters. This isn't something new. It was in Worlds, and there was a version of it in Rise. But in Wilds, Capcom's tweaked it slightly to allow you to not only attack the monster while on its back with a light attack, but you can now also do a weapon attack while mounted as well. Which, from my understanding, can lead into finishing moves, which are like big combos that do massive amounts of damage. For example, using dual blades, they have a signature move where you can spin and slice along the back of the monster all the way down the spine. In previous games, this took some setup, and it took just the right angle to get just right. And from the looks of it, you can now just do this attack after mounting the combo instead. Cooking and food bonuses are a big part of Monster Hunter. From the stat bumps to the amazing little animations and the absolutely mouth-watering looking food that you can eat in this game. Wilds is adding a new portable grill, which is a step up from your traditional barbecue that you used to cook with. You still have that, but with Wilds being so large and prompting the open world concept, there's less need to return to camp, so you'll need a way to eat while on the go. The portable grill and all the food systems will be slightly different than previous games as well. You'll have your main protein or your meat, you'll have plants and mushrooms, and then you have your herbs. Different combinations lead to different results. The last thing I wanted to touch on, speaking of camps, was the new type of outposts that you can set up yourself. Now, there were old camps in the other games. These were small areas that were safe and out of reach of monsters where you could go and either swap your loadout, restock your inventory, eat, or rest. But in Wilds, you can now customize the location of these camps. There are still spots where it prompts you to put them, but there are a lot more of them. However, the thing with these ones is you have to be careful where you place them. They're no longer hidden away, and they're exposed to attacks from monsters. There's even a scene from the live stream where the player went into his camp, and it was then knocked down, and he was kicked out of his tent because Doshigama attacked and destroyed the camp. All in all, guys, I am extremely excited for this game. From everything that we've seen and heard, this is shaping up to definitely be a Game of the Year contender. I will be doing more Monster Hunter content throughout the next few months, leading up to the release, which, fingers crossed, should be sometime in early 2025. If you enjoyed the video or found it helpful in any way, do me a huge favor and smash that subscribe button for me, as well as the bell next to it to stay up to date with all of my latest Monster Hunter news and videos. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for coming and watching, but that's all from me for now. Wolf, out!